All right, we are live on YouTube. Welcome, my friends. Is it Tuesday? Tuesday. Get all set up on Instagram here. All right, we are live on Instagram as well. Welcome, my friends. Happy Tuesday. Hope you guys are having a good day, good start to the week. I wanted to jump on here today to talk about a post that we made yesterday and dive a little bit deeper into that post and particularly the results of that and really how maybe you guys can relate to that as well. And so the post was on a test that we run for all of our clients called the HTMA. You might be familiar with it, you might not. Basically, what that HTMA test is it takes a small sample of your hair and we send it off to a lab. And based on that sample, it's a reflection of the minerals or the nutrients that your body has at the cell level within your body, where all the action takes place, right? And that is important, particularly for the context of the post that we made yesterday. So if you didn't check out the post, maybe after the live, you can go ahead and take a look at that. There's like a test result in the background of me in this reel. It's about 3 minutes or so. So go check that out. But today we'll be talking about giving more context to that post because it's really about those individuals that are having challenges with their fatigue, with their like prediabetes, so blood sugar, and then hypothyroidism, the combination of those three, right? What is the link between all three of those? Well, on this HTMA test is something called a thyroid ratio, right? And this is the ratio between minerals calcium and potassium. So we'll get to that in a second. But basically, what this ratio is referring to is the our body's ability to utilize thyroid hormone. It's not how much thyroid hormone we're creating, but at the cell level, how well does our body have at utilizing the thyroid hormone that our body is making available, right? And this is really important because when this ratio is off, we tend to experience higher blood sugar. We tend to experience more fatigue because energy is not getting where it needs to go. We're going to tend to experience more hypothyroidism symptoms, whether that be fatigue, cold intolerances, weight gain, sleep issues, anxiety, mood swings, that kind of a thing. Because again, energy is not getting where it needs to go, right? And thyroid hormone is the thing that really impacts every single cell in the body. It powers the metabolism. And so if we don't have that, there's going to be symptoms in really every facet of our body because we just don't have that metabolism humming where it really needs to be, right? And so when we look at something like the symptoms that our client was experiencing and what many clients experience was a combination of fatigue, prediabetes, so A1C of hers was like 5.9, higher blood sugars throughout the day, and then hypothyroidism. What do those have to do together? Well, if we go back to what we were just talking about, the HTMA, this thyroid ratio shows the balance between calcium and potassium, right? And when this ratio is right, around like 4.2, this allows our body to utilize that thyroid hormone effectively so we can get the benefits. We can get the energy benefits. We can get the weight loss benefits. We can get the calming benefits, right? We can get the sleep benefits. But if that is not present, then we're going to struggle more so in those different areas, right? The thing to note about this is oftentimes we see a thyroid ratio that's quite high in our client's case with the post that we made on was that Monday? Yeah, Monday. Um, her ratio is high because of a combination of high calcium and low potassium. And when we have a ratio like that, high calcium, low potassium, that ratio is going to be quite big, right? So hers was around 40, and ideally we want that to be around a 4.2. And that is definitely very common in the clients that we see struggle more with fatigue, prediabetes or higher blood sugar, and then hypothyroidism. And this was a client that was on like a really, really heavy dose of thyroid medication. And we see this all the time. So how does this happen? I think that's the first question that we need to ask is why do we have a high thyroid ratio? Like, why would that happen? Is it just because we're eating too much calcium and not enough potassium? Is that the reason? It's not that simple. I wish it was, but it's not that simple. Because a high calcium like that does not come up simply because we ate too much yogurt or too much cheese or leafy greens or anything like that. It becomes high for a few different reasons. I'll talk mainly about our client, but I'll also suggest some other ways that becomes high as well. Many times it becomes high because we are taking like vitamin D or calcium supplements. That is the one exception in terms of diet that can come from, because it's such a large amount at one time, and it doesn't have like the cofactors that can help us to utilize that effectively. And so when we have those cofactors and we're taking those for over, or when we have the calcium rather, we're taking that over extended period of time, that has a tendency to go up. And that's particularly when you combine that with a vitamin D supplement, right? Because vitamin D helps your body absorb more of that calcium, and so therefore that bar is going to rise. And unfortunately, I don't have the ability to show you that test over live like this, but just go back with that reel that I posted yesterday, and you'll see that. So this bar becomes very, very high, and that's suggested of high cellular calcium. And that is important because what that does, like if you imagine like a wall, right, like a brick wall, and it's placed in front of your cell, and you're producing the thyroid hormone, you have the carbohydrates to get in, but it's not quite getting past this wall. It's not absorbing. Well, that's kind of the situation that many people find themselves in when they have this high thyroid ratio. Their thyroid labs might look normal. They might have normal blood work, maybe outside of like the higher A1C or higher blood sugar, but yet they're still having like these symptoms, and that is a byproduct of this high thyroid ratio, because it's the calcium is blocking nutrients from actually getting in, right? And so that can be blocking thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone can't get in. Well, it can't do its job. Even if we're producing the right amounts, even if we have the right medication dosage, we might have to rely more and more and more on that dosage to get the same benefit. And even then, it might not be enough to prevent the symptoms that we're experiencing, right? In our client's case, it was, mood and low mood and anxiety, low motivation, low energy, particularly in the afternoons, tossing and turning at night, higher blood sugar and A1C, and then, low T4, low T3, which are, thyroid labs. So a combination of all of those things resulted in a lot of these symptoms, and primarily had to do with this higher calcium that she was experiencing as well. Now, in combination with that, she also had low potassium, right? And whenever we have low potassium, well, we're not going to be as sensitive to the thyroid hormone that we're making. We're not going to be as carb sensitive. Our blood sugar is going to shoot up more, right? So she was actually missing a lot of that. But where that stems from is a high like stress response. And whenever we have like a lot of this higher calcium, what's underneath that, what causes that is also what causes a low potassium, right? So going back to the low to the high calcium, the reason that happens, of course, is the high supplementation with vitamin D, supplementation with calcium, but it also has to do with things like a high stress response, right, in our routines. Many times we discount this, we simplify, or it is more of a basic foundational thing, but in reality, even the most advanced clients really don't quite support themselves enough in this area. And that doesn't mean you just reduce your stress or breathe better or meditate. It's much more than that. But when you can regulate your body's ability to regulate that stress, even during stressful times, it's not going to hinder your ability to regulate your blood sugar, regulate your thyroid hormone, regulate your energy, right? And a big reason why that's the case is because when our body has a high stress response, we're not really responding to stress very well, that calcium really comes up, over time, especially if we've had traumas, especially if we've taken calcium and vitamin D supplementation, especially if, we're having maybe meals that are healthy, but they're not quite in line with what we need, right? At this level, it's not about just eating healthy and clean. It's about eating in a way that really works for our body and brings out what we call the positive biofeedback, the energy, the satisfaction, the stability, the ability to sleep throughout the night without waking up, right? All of those things. When we have that, well, that's when those positive symptoms, you might say, come about, which is a good thing. Now, This high calcium blocks thyroid hormone from getting into our cells. And like we talked about, that impacts many different facets of our body. The other thing that it also impacts is our ability to tolerate carbohydrates and regulate our blood sugar, because the other one of the other nutrients that is blocked in that process is glucose. So if we can't get glucose into the cell, then for many people they tend to experience higher blood sugar, even if they're eating, fairly low carb, even if they're eating healthy and clean and staying active. If that is the case at the cell level, then it's going to be very hard to regulate that blood sugar, right? So that is why for many people they have thyroid-based issues despite taking a lot of medication, despite eating clean and healthy. They're not quite able to get that thyroid hormone or that glucose in the cell, and as a result of that energy just not being there, or that gas pedal, if you will, to keep our metabolism humming. When we don't have those pieces, it's very likely that you're going to experience more fatigue, going to experience more higher blood sugars and prediabetes and insulin resistance, even if you're healthy otherwise, right? You're going to experience the need for more and more and more thyroid based medication because it's not getting into the cell to do its job. What we find when clients can address this ratio and look at the reasons why this calcium is coming up and why their potassium is going down, well, they absolutely need to get off of the thyroid hormone or at least reduce the dosage, because they don't need as much, because that process is working more effectively. Their thyroid hormone is getting into the cell more effectively, right? We've seen this 10 times over where as the clients really start to improve upon this, they start to get like hyperthyroid, where it's like too much, and then they need to really back down on the dosage. I remember one client in particular, she was on thyroid hormone for like 20 years, right? And she was able to get off of it. And I can't guarantee that for everybody, right? Everybody is a little bit different, different story. But at the same time, it goes to show the impact of something like this can create for clients when they have the right minerals present, not only for their blood sugar regulation, but also in terms of how they feel, right? So this is really huge. They can rely less on thyroid hormone, if not get off of it. They can have energy, especially at those lulls. For our client, it was, during those afternoons, especially that she was really feeling more fatigued. They can sleep throughout the night without waking up or having to use the bathroom, right? They can tolerate more carbs without having their blood sugar spike on them. They can normalize those readings and have more steady readings so that they're not feeling more anxious, or they're not having those big mood swings or experiencing more of that lower motivation. They have the ability to exercise without it being this depleting thing. So all of these things improve as a byproduct of addressing this thyroid ratio, which can be really crucial. And that's why we look at the HTMA, because it's not just that's the only thing that we look at. There's other areas as well, that are really important for, of course, improving blood sugar balance, but also supporting your overall health as a whole. So you just improve the natural functioning of your body, right? So that's why we use it. That's why a lot of our clients love it, because we're looking at the root of why that's the case. We're not just slapping supplements on it and saying, hey, your thyroid ratio is high. You should, avoid calcium based foods and you should be supplementing with potassium. It doesn't work like that. That's a part of it. That's a part of, dietary intake, and intake of calcium and potassium is a part of it, but it's certainly not the reason why many people have these off ratios, right? It comes down to looking at lifestyle things, even supplements that may not be supporting you, but we're told that they're beneficial. Well, there's a difference between it. Is it beneficial in totality, or is it beneficial for you? We want to find what's beneficial for you, right? So I hope that helps. I hope that provides some context to this. If you want even more context, I would look at the post that we made yesterday talking all about this thyroid ratio. If you have questions on that, feel free to post that below this video, or the video that you'll watch later on if you haven't seen the one on the thyroid ratio. All right. Cool, guys. Well, I hope this was helpful. If you want this type of support with your blood sugar, your overall health, please reach out. We'd love to help. All right. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll talk soon.